All right, everybody. I will be doing a live stream with Michael Jordan Fans Are the Best again this Sunday. I apologize for saying that the last debate I had about if there can be an individual GOAT within team sports wasn't live. I thought that was going to go live, but now looking back, it looks like he records the debates and uploads them and does other stuff live, like on Sundays or something. So this one will actually be live, and it won't be so much a debate, I don't think, but essentially what it will be is the greatest final runs in history, right? It'll be at 11 p.m. Central, by the way, on Sunday over on his page. And you guys know where I'm going to come from with this. We're going to talk 2011 Dallas Mavericks, correct? And in my opinion, right, even as subjective and as biased as I am, it's easily a top 3 or 5 finals run of all time, right? They were a 4 seed coming in, I believe. Some people thought they were going to lose to Portland in the first round. They end up beating them 4-2, I believe. They gave up, I think in both the games they lost, they gave up big leads, right? So even coming out of that series, they were pretty shaky. And one thing people don't know about that Mavs team in the regular season, and this is kind of crazy too, if we go back before the playoffs, right? There were, I believe, 3 separate times that the Mavs stopped like a 10 or 12 game win streak. I think the Spurs, the Heat, and then some other team. 3 times they beat teams that were on a roll. We also lost Caron Butler like a quarter of the way in or a third of the way into the season. And Caron Butler was, and I'll go more into detail in the stream. I'll get all my numbers right. But Caron Butler was essentially our second option. He was like a really good glue guy. He was him and Marion were probably our best defenders. Tyson Chandler down low. Those 3 guys were decent defenders. On offense, he was probably the third option. I believe he was starting as well. He was having a good season. I mean, he was playing a pivotal role in our team before he got hurt. And a lot of people don't talk about that with that 2011 Mavericks team is that Caron Butler, I think the Mavs front office, over my lifetime, they've gotten a few things right, but they've gotten the draft right a few times, correct? But when it comes to trading and signing players, I think they've missed the mark a few times. However, in that 2011 run, we had gotten Jason Terry. We had him previously. I'm just saying, in terms of players that were actually on that team that they got that were good, right? Terry, Caron Butler, getting Jason Kidd back. That team was actually a culmination of some good moves the Mavs had made in the offseason through the years. And just to be clear, Jason Terry was the only player left on that team from the 2006 loss we had to the Heat, which, there's some speculation there if shenanigans or cahoots were afoot. I'm not gonna make excuses, right? But there's possibly some things that could be said there about Dwayne Wade and the Heat and free throws and all that kind of stuff, right? But that's for you guys to decide. I don't really like to make excuses, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. What was another? Oh yeah. So speaking of 2006, right? So if we go back to the regular season, Dirk had also missed some time. Caron Butler went out. Jason Kidd was old. Peja Stojakovic was old. This was not, even though you look at this team and you say Sean Marion, Jason Terry, Tyson Chandler, we got Brendan Haywood, Peja Stojakovic. We had a lot of these good veterans. Caron Butler at that time was a veteran too. They were definitely not in their prime, right? And I know my friends sometimes joke with me about the 2011 Mavs were a super team, right? I know they're halfway kidding, but Kidd was definitely on his way out. So was Peja. Peja barely played. Dirk was definitely in the twilight of his career. The window was very quickly closing. That team, and remember, Dirk was the only All Star. I looked it up, and I think it's only happened maybe like 10 or 12 times that there's only been one All Star on a team to win a ring. And a few of those teams, too, is like LeBron with the Cavs, but I mean, they had Kyrie, right? I mean, Kyrie's definitely like an All Star caliber player, and he was in the playoffs that year. Again, I have a video essentially saying that Kyrie Irving probably deserves a little more credit than LeBron for winning that ring in Cleveland. If you look at his defense on Steph Curry, and Curry was definitely limited in about 3 or 4 games, that's a direct result of Kyrie Irving's defense. I mean, he took the motor out of that team, out of the Warriors and Curry, and he really does not get enough credit. In my opinion, I give the slight edge to him, and for the main reason why they won that championship, which might be a little controversial, but that's just my 2 cents. But there was also some other teams, like Giannis when he won. I mean, they had Drew Holiday, who had been an All Star before and was still like in the prime of Drew Holiday when they won. He was still in the prime of his athletic career. Same with Middleton, right? Where there was no one in their prime when Dirk won. You could argue Chandler maybe was a little bit. Jason Terry was still capable, but definitely was not like in his physical peak. But you could say that Terry and Chandler were still perhaps a little bit on maybe just the backside of their peak in terms of athletic ability and physical fitness. But there was nobody was even close to being an all-star on that team besides Dirk. Now Jason Terry can be instant offense, but he definitely he might have been like in the top 3 or 5 for the 6 man running a little bit. And props to Terry also, by the way, for when he was asked to go to the bench, he said no problem. Terry deserves a lot of credit, I think, for that run as well, in terms of just being a team player and doing what he needed to do, and outperforming LeBron, by the way, in the finals. Just for the record, for all the LeBron fans out there, man, like 2011's got to be a hard pill to swallow in terms of how he performed. Not that I'm complaining. But Dirk was just not only the only All Star, but he was clearly the only All Star, right? There was not even a close second where maybe a guy was snubbed or something like that, or there was a guy who was still on that in his peak and prime of maybe he was an All Star the year before or something like that. No one was even close, right? I mean, JJ Barea, for crying out loud, played a pivotal role in like the Lakers series, for example. But of course, Dirk's run gets talked about a lot, as it should. I do think it is, I'm going to make the argument, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail during the live stream about why I do think it's the greatest final run ever. Now, something that's kind of interesting, or you must make the distinction of, is that if you think people, obviously Dirk only won one, right? So that one means so much more to him than perhaps Jordan's 6, just as an example, right? Maybe Jordan's first one, or the one he won after his dad died. Like you could maybe, in terms of like off the court narratives and storylines, right? Not on the court. But to say which one of Jordan's 6 was the greatest, or maybe meant more than the others. And I think the title is greatest finals run, but I think impact should also be a key word in the discussion, right? So like it's kind of hard to say if you had to pick one of Jordan's 6 that's more important than the other. It's again, it's like obviously Jordan's greater and his 6 are much greater than Dirk's 1, but if you had to pick one and how much it meant and what he had to go through and the storylines and the narrative centered around it, I just think the 2011 Mavs is hard to not pick as number 1 or 2. I would maybe put Akeem's first ring with the Rockets. Coming from a 6 seed's pretty incredible. Again, Jordan being retired, people bring that up a lot. I think the Rockets would have at least won one, even if Jordan was there. You kind of have to just give it to them. When they go back to back, it's hard to deny them. So let's say Jordan didn't retire. They probably get one, right? I mean, you just maybe thinking about the odds of it, right? And you can argue that, of course. And I mean, I wouldn't push back too much on that, but, you have to give the Rockets their due. And winning as a 6 seed, right, that's pretty incredible. So I think that would be another one you could argue. But obviously, as a Mavs fan and being biased, I'm just going to go with 2011, right? And going back to the first series, the Mavs gave up some big leads in the 2 games they lost. It ended up being a 4-2 series. And a lot of people picked, like Mark Cuban said, that the Mavericks were known as the one and done boys up to that point, right? People laughed at us. Dirk's a choker. He can't get it done in the big moments. He choked in '06, especially when you bring up the free throws that he missed from time to time in that Heat series. They went up 2-0 and they lost, and they got knocked out in the first round by Golden State the next year as a 1 seed. There's all these storylines with the 2011 Mavericks, I think, is what actually, besides the on the court. The on the court was still great. But the storylines going on around the Mavericks at the time, right? And what it meant, the franchise's first ring, I'm diehard. Like, I went to game 3 with my dad. Mavs lost that game, unfortunately. They went down 2-1. They end up reeling off 3 straight to win it. To win the series 4-2 against Miami. Game 2, right? Game 2 in Miami has got to be, I mean, if you are a basketball fan, right? I can remember I just graduated college. Yeah, so 2011. So I just graduated college, and I was waiting tables while I was also trying to find a job. This was like right after I graduated, I think. And I can remember being like, I was a good waiter, right? Anybody who knew me, I was a very people person. I can talk, I can shoot the shit, whatever. I could not focus at all on what was going on. And I was telling people, I'm a diehard Mavs fan. And I mean, all of a sudden my tables are getting in on it with me, right? And I mean, we're watching this 15-point comeback with 7.5 minutes to go. Everybody thought Dallas was dead in the water. And I mean, here comes Dirk. And it was just like this. I mean, we had this feeling the whole time, right, leading up to the series. But it just felt like destiny, right? It just felt like the basketball gods were just looking down on Dirk and said, you have put so much into this game. We have tried to make you quit every single way we can get you to quit. And they just looked down and said, it's your time. Like, if you want this, it's your time. And it's still, like, I still can vividly remember yelling in the restaurant and my manager telling me to shut up and keep it down. And I just didn't care. I was going absolutely bonkers in the restaurant in front of my tables and everything. They enjoyed it, by the way. Like, nobody was really that upset. It was even more of like a fine dining restaurant, by the way, which was pretty cool. And yeah, like, it was an incredible run. I also found out today that Dirk holds the all-time playoff series run for most points averaged in the fourth quarter with 9.9, almost 10 points in the fourth quarter during that playoff run in 2011. Not just for the finals, for the entire playoff run. And I mean, of course, people always bring up who he went through, right? Aldridge and Roy. This is back when Roy was still amazing. Brandon Roy for the Blazers, and LaMarcus Aldridge was in his prime. He beat them in the first round. We sweep the Lakers, 2-time defending back-to-back champions. We sweep them. People will say Kobe was hurt. I don't give a shit. Gasol, Bynum, Kobe. I think Odom was still there. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I have to go back again. I'm just kind of spitting here. We swept them, right? So I mean, and they, first of all, for them being hurt, they won their first round game, right? So I don't want to hear it. They swept the Lakers. Nobody thought. I mean, and I think after we swept the Lakers and just seeing Dirk just, I mean, first of all, Gasol was guarding him a lot, right? And I think at that time, right, Gasol, maybe people have like started to put Gasol ahead of Dirk, and I knew, right? I know Dirk's a better all-around player than Gasol, in my opinion, especially on the offensive end. It's not even close. You could maybe say like Gasol's a little bit of a better rebounder or something like that. I think Dirk's defense actually is a little underrated. I don't know how much hate he gets. I mean, he's not a good or great defender, but he was good enough to where what he was giving you on the offensive end, you could live with it. And yeah, man, they swept the Lakers, and it just felt like that was the moment, especially when we took two in LA, right? It felt like, it's hard to explain it, but it was like we definitely can do this. Like this, we can definitely do this if everybody plays their role. Again, we have no other stars, but if people play their role, do what they're supposed to do, and we just if we I know it's easier said than done, right? But just make our shot. We can get open shots, right? I've talked about how big of a fan I am of Carlisle. I think Carlisle can manufacture offense with the best of them if you give him just an average team, right? He will squeeze the most buckets out of a team on offense. And, the only knock on him is he's not quite a player's coach, and it's a little bit of a complex system from what I hear. And you kind of need to be in the right spot at the right time to kind of make it work, which can be a little hard for, new guys or guys who maybe aren't as good with the X's and O's and running an offense. But with our team, right, a group of veterans with someone like that, it's the perfect fit. And you give him the one guy that he can make a defense have to pay attention to. Rick Carlisle just ran good offense too, and he used Dirk in the absolute best way on that pin post, that elbow, right? Getting him close enough for good shots, but also far enough that if you wanted to go double team him or do something, you're leaving someone like Chandler open underneath the basket, or Terry for the three, or Marion cut into the basket. It was just a thing of beauty, right? And then we beat Oklahoma 4-1, and I have to admit, right, the Heat were just right the kind of the first super team really to join up in this new era of how they do things. It just kind of felt like, man, we get back to the finals from '06, right? And again, the storylines, right? Dirk's getting redemption, and who else does he face? But it's the Miami Heat once again, and they still have Dwayne Wade, and so I don't care if it's a different team or not, or different players or not. We wanted revenge so bad, and it's like we get there, and of course it's the year that they signed Chris Bosh and LeBron James, right? And you just kind of go, damn, man, like, any other time I would say like this is it, but like going up against them, I mean, you definitely had some doubts. I mean, obviously as a Mavs fan, I'm ready to roll anytime, but you definitely felt like it's just, of course this is what we would have to face getting back to the championship round, right? And another funny fact is Eric Dampier, I don't know if you guys remember him, but he was on the Mavs in '06 when we lost to Miami, and then he was on Miami when they lost to Dallas, which I just always found hilarious. And I don't feel bad because we gave up so much for him, and he gave us almost nothing, not nowhere near what we paid him and shit. And we were really hoping he'd be the big man that we always needed. And lo and behold, eventually Chandler would be that guy. And so yeah, I mean, you go in game one, we're on the road, so we lose game one, and we just got to get one game right in Miami, and we're down 15 with 7.5 minutes to go. And the feeling is not good, right? The feeling is not good. Being a jump shooting team as they were, by the way, which is another impressive thing about them. I think they were third, if I remember right, during the season. They were like the third best shooting team throughout the season. So like they were a good jump shooting team. You think about Terry and even Peja and Dirk. And people forget, Kidd had turned into quite the spot-up three-point shooter. I'm not saying he was going to make it rain or anything, but if you didn't respect the three, Kidd had at least gotten to the point where there's a decent chance it's going to go in if you just leave him open to shoot, right? Which, in that comeback, this comeback in Game 2, Kidd did hit a big three. And just that comeback then and then was absolutely incredible. And we go to game 3 and we lose. I was at that game and we lose. And, they took home court back. And it's, again, it's just doom and gloom in your head. You're thinking, man, Obviously we can still take it back. If we win these next two and go up 3-2, you got to feel good about your odds, right? We just need 1 out of 2 in Miami. We already won 1 of 2 in Miami. Surely we could do it again. And we lose game 3, and Dirk. It's just you feel so bad for Dirk the whole time, right? You're just thinking like, this cannot happen to him again. And we ended up winning games 4, 5, and 6, and it's just you have to there. So like when it comes to being a basketball fan, I'm a basketball fan, right? But you guys got to realize I was going to Mavs games when they were still in Reunion Arena with my dad, and we would from time to time sneak down to the lower deck, right? Because the Mavs were horrible. I remember AC Green and Popeye Jones and Chris Anstey. Chris Anstey was like Dirk before Dirk. He was this guy out of Australia. I think he was like 6'10" or something like that. Decent mobility, could shoot. I remember those days, right, when the Mavs sucked. And for anyone who's ever been a loyal fan of a franchise when they sucked and they become good and you finally get that ring, I mean, there's no better feeling, right? I remember telling my friends in 10th grade, that would have been 2003, I believe. I told them, I was like, Dirk will win an MVP and Dirk's going to win a ring, right? And you get all the way to 2011 and you're kind of like, oh, the window's quickly closing, right? And me and my friends, so for those who don't know, Mark Cuban, so there's like the lower deck, right? And then on the outside of the lower deck is standing room only. It's just like one row of standing after that last row on the lower deck. And what that is for is fans who come and they paint their bodies up get in for free. And then if there's too many people, then you have to do like a skit or a competition, right? And me and my friends did that all the time. We probably did that about a dozen times or so. And we also, fun fact, we did it for MJ's farewell tour when he was going to retire. And we said we obviously we have to go see MJ's last game in Dallas, right? And we went and saw that, and we got in. We had to do a skit, and like we got in. That's one of my more fonder memories of basketball. But the culmination of everything in 2011 for the Mavs franchise, for Dirk, the Dirk winning that ring was everything, right? I mean, it took him from a great respected player to a legend, right? It really put him over the hump, and it was also the way he did it, right? Dirk was known as being soft. He was a choker. I remember Barkley once said something so great about Dirk, and I never thought about it this way, but this was, before, this might have been like between '06 and 2011, right, when they were kind of struggling in the playoffs, and Charles said something like, 30 points is not always just 30 points, right? And this kind of goes back to my statistic of Dirk scoring 10 points in the fourth quarter on average during the 2011 playoff run. He essentially said, like, if you got 30 points by the end of the third, but it's a close game and you don't score anymore, that's when your team needs you, right? And that's kind of what Dirk was at that time. He would give you 30 points, but it was like in the fourth quarter when games were close and stuff, and defenses really keyed in on him, or doubled him or something. He was good at making that pass, and sometimes guys would hit it, sometimes they wouldn't. But as a star, right, you have to show up. Like, you have to show up, and you have to be there in the fourth when your team really needs you, right? And at first when Charles said that, I kind of disagreed, right? Because you just kind of think like, well, 30 points is 30 points, right? I mean, if you score 30, your team needs that 30. But the way that Dirk did it in 2011, right, it just left no doubts. It left no doubts that he was who we always hoped he would be. This finally allowed us to kind of put those things to bed in terms of he couldn't win the big one. He was a choker. He wasn't clutch. He just couldn't get over the hump. And the way he did it and who he beat, it was just absolutely incredible. I mean, I joke all the time. I'd say if the Mavericks never win another ring for the rest of my life, I'm still happy. Like, I'm still happy. It was the best thing ever in terms of sports. For me as a Mavs fan, right? It was just absolute chef's kiss. Like, if Luka never wins a ring, if the Mavs never win a ring before my time comes, like, I don't care. I'll still die with a smile on my face thinking about 2011. It was just the absolute pinnacle of redemption, proving people wrong, perseverance, all of those things, all the buzzwords, right? Getting to play the Heat and Wade again after '06. It was just really was special. And it's got to be, I mean, even objectively, it's got to be a top 3 playoff run, right? Playoff and finals run. And I think the storylines, if we just talk about like narratives and storylines outside of just looking like on paper, like runs and stuff, I think it's number 1. I think it's easily number 1 in terms of what it meant, right? The impact for a particular franchise or player or legacy. The redemption part against the Heat is obviously a big thing. Beating the super team that formed that first year, and they were going to win not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8 rings, right? And they lost that first year, and the Mavs just put them in their place. I mean, what more do you want, right, in terms of storylines? Like, what more could you ask for, whether you're a Mavericks fan or just a NBA fan? And, I mean, yeah, it was just absolutely incredible. So, Sunday, 11 a.m. Central Time, 12 p.m. Eastern. I believe we will be live. I'll be on Michael Jordan Fans or the Best Fans page, and we'll be talking about, I think it's titled Best Finals Runs, but I think impact should be an important word there, because, best finals runs, you could just say a guy who scored 50 a game, right, through the whole playoffs, right? But what did it mean, right? Like, what did it mean for that player and that team and that franchise? And you think about it, right? Marion, he played forever on the Suns and, had given them so much, and him and Nash and Stoudemire and all those guys, D'Antoni, they could never get over the hump. Poor Nash. He's one of the guys I really wish would have won a ring. Former Maverick. Obviously, I love him. I really wish he would have got one. Robert Horry checking him into the scores table is just one of the most unfortunate calls ever. And I guess you have to give it to Horry, I guess. I guess he got what he wanted, right? If you can take out the best player or two and you're like the 4th or 5th best player, or not even a starter from time to time, and you can make that trade, just like on paper, you could do it every time. But, that sucked for them, and Marion finally got a ring. And Marion was still, earlier I said, he was like kind of on the downslope, right? But he was still contributing, is probably the best way to put it, right? He still was the Matrix. He still was a good defender, and he was still a good slasher and hit shots from time to time. That ugly ass shot of his. And, Kidd, one of the greatest point guards ever. I think he's probably one of the most underrated players ever, mainly just because he didn't shoot very well, right? He didn't score a lot of points. But, man, him being a Maverick, another good storyline. It's so crazy that Dirk's storyline is so high that if, let's say, Kidd had come back and been sort of in Dirk's shoes, right? I mean, we're talking about a top 5 point guard all time, essentially, arguably. Coming back to the team who drafted him, and going to the finals and winning, right? Another amazing storyline. Finally getting his first ring after 3 trips. Much the same storyline as Dirk. It's just that it was Dirk's ring to win, and rightfully so. Peja Stojakovic, an absolute fan favorite, and the Mavs and the Kings and those battles they used to have, and Peja getting one. I really wish Caron Butler would have stayed healthy. He really balled out on the Wizards there for a while, and I always liked Caron Butler. I always thought he was like a really well-rounded player all over the floor. I really wish he would have been healthy for us. Jason Terry, he'd been with us for so long after we got him from the Hawks, and he was the only player left from that '06 team, and to see him and Dirk get revenge was nice. You know, I love Jason Terry, dude. Instant offense, flamethrower. You know, absolute just marksman, would kill you. You think about him compared to LeBron on the stat sheet, and the fact that, you know, he's largely coming off the bench and doing better than LeBron. You love to see it. You love to see it. So, but yeah, I'll be there Sunday. We'll be talking about it. I'll talk about all this and more. Making my case for why I think 2011 is probably the greatest playoff and finals run ever. The competition they had to go through, winning as a 4 seed. I believe they were a 4 seed or a 5th seed. I can't quite remember, but they were like 50-50 with Portland in terms of odds. They definitely were not picked to beat the Lakers or the Thunder or the Heat. So just an absolute incredible run. But yeah, that's my video. We'll be there Sunday, and I'll talk to y'all